Welcome back to Jeopardy Southern Edition. Our contestant didn't make it on the board in round 1, but we hope to change that soon. Chad, you have the board.
I'll take history for 200.
The answer is an American statesman, diplomat, lawyer, architect, philosopher, and founding father, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence.
Let's see, who is Moses?
That is incorrect. The answer was who is Thomas Jefferson. Sorry about that. Daisy May, you have the board.
I'll take science for 400.
And the answer is the study of life in living organisms, including their physical structure, chemical processes, molecular interaction, physiological mechanism, development, and evolution.
Jesus. The answer's always Jesus.
No, we were looking for what is biology. Okay, Bubba, you have the board.
I'll take world leader for 200.
The answer is world-renowned peaceful man who advocated non-violence at all costs in his diplomatic relations.
Well, clearly, who is Donald Trump? He said be peaceful, just before he told us to fight. But Donald Trump. Clearly.
Trump? Are you fucking kidding me? What the hell is wrong with you? What are you talking about? Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. You inbred imbecile. What the hell is this? I'm out of here. I don't care about this, Tom. I can't believe this crap. I'm getting off.
Hi, this is Neil, the 604 Atheist, and I took a left at the Valley.
Fantastic.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from Pacific Coast, BC, this is Left of the Valley 2.0. My name is Kevin, and I just helped my neighbor bury a rolled carpet in the woods. Her boyfriend would have done it, but apparently he's out of town.
Oh, dear.
Joining me as usual is a team who find it ironic to be called sheep by people who claim the Lord is my shepherd. She wants a job cleaning windows. No, not windows. So she wants a job cleaning mirrors. It's something she could really see herself doing.
Ooh.
Sabrina.
You know the mirror's my favorite thing.
And he almost had a psychic girlfriend, but she left him before they could meet. Brent Lee.
Smart woman.
There was just too much she was going to see.
Guys, welcome back. I hope you had a great week.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah. I got half vaccinated.
Congratulations. Good for you, man.
I apparently can go. I'm just, a procrastinator at heart.
No, I just think it's just a hoax. It's just a Chinese hoax. All of it. So I'm just waiting for the Chinese vaccine before I can go.
My 5G uplink.
You know what I want to do? I want so badly if the vaccine would have, if I would have been a public figure, you know, when how they have the press and all that, and like the first person vaccinated and all that, they missed such an opportunity because you remember when they did that in England, you know, the first person to get the vaccine and the press is there and how are you feeling, blah blah. I would have gone up and raised my arms like Frankenstein and said, I am listening to Bill Gates giving me instructions, listen to my overlord, and I still would have walked away like a zombie. I would have so played that.
Just cause.
just to show the stupidity of it all.
My way.
Are you guys tracking me down? Brains. Bill Gates ordered me to eat brains for reptilian overlords. Brains.
Yeah.
So today we'll be talking to Constitutional Professor Joel Bakan.
Constitutional law.
Yes,
professor.
Constitutional Law Professor Joel Bakan. And we'll be talking about The Corporation and his new book and movie, The New Corporation. By the way, if you have not seen that, highly
watch it.
Highly recommend.
Where did we watch it? Amazon Prime?
on the new corporation on Crave.
Crave. Oh,
the original corporation.
That's only Canadian.
Yeah, the original corporation movie came out in 2004. I've got 2 copies of it myself, and I've got the book right here with me. So just like,
I believe it's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Totally is, yeah.
Definitely, we watched the corporation on YouTube. Now I don't know, is the new corporation on YouTube? Probably. We'll have to ask.
I don't know.
Anyway,
that'll be in the second half of the show.
Watch it.
But first, let's get in with our chit chat. I gotta start with this story because this is a local story. In BC, right here, there was a flat earther. So you know this is gonna be fun to be with.
Oh goodness!
His name is.
Nice.
I don't know this story, so this should be interesting.
His name is Mark Parkhar, and he's alleging, and he accused the BC government of kidnapping him.
Oh God!
After he was jailed for breaking quarantine. So, so this guy, of course, is a COVID-19
So they arrested him, and by arresting him, he said they were kidnapping him?
That's exactly it.
Oh, yes. Okay.
It's a bit like Monty Python. Help, I'm being repressed. Help. This guy, he's a COVID denier, obviously, an anti-masker. He was arrested in November 2020 for breaking quarantine after attending a Flat Earth conference in the U.S.
Oh,
so he went to the U.S., and of course...
Where it was rampaging in November.
Exactly. Yeah. And he came back, and he's supposed to quarantine, and he decided, fuck that shit.
And he got busted.
He was arrested in jail for 4 days.
Good. So they made him quarantine, bastard.
Well, he's supposed to be quarantined for 14 days. But So he filed a claim for trespassing and arresting a, quote, naturalized person. So this guy is not just a flat earther and an anti-masker and a COVID denier. He's also one of these people that think that laws don't apply to him because he doesn't spell his name the same way that it's spelled on his birth certificate or something.
What?
Yeah, there's this whole phenomenon called naturalized people. You know, basically they're saying that countries are essentially corporations. And they don't agree to it. They don't agree to be citizens of that.
Okay.
So the law don't apply to them. And they'll say things like, you know, when you receive a letter from the government, it spells your name like all in capital letters. But that's not how I spell my name. I spell like capital K, but small E-V-I-N. Therefore, we're not referring to the same person.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Why is this not another brilliant moment?
It's not really brought to you by religion.
That's true.
But it's a thing.
Oh my God.
It's actually a thing.
Okay, well, okay. Yeah. Sure.
The judge kind of looked at him and kind of laughed, and he said, you know, the law doesn't work in an opt-in base. So he basically said, okay, you do back to court this summer, and you will be sentenced for God knows how long. So.
Oh, God. Well, it's Canada, so like 3 days, but...
Like, how does that work? Like, you're just like, hold on, but I decided previously to not have to follow any of the laws.
Right?
You know,
let's all do that, man.
Well, you know, I mean, we'd have to almost bring a person on that, but it's kind of complex. But it goes back to things like Magna Carta and things like, if the Queen, well, for example, the British here in Canada, you know, they own the land, but do they really? You know, do you own me as well? You know, and are you a subject of the Queen or are you not? I didn't make a allegiance or anything to any of these people. Therefore, I'm a independent, quote, naturalized person. It's fairly complex. But it's also ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It's kind of just like a whole lot of talking to be like, yeah, your laws don't apply to me.
Right?
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
Y'all weirdos. Like, you don't get to govern me. I just live here in the place that's being governed by you. But that's neither here nor there.
Yes. Okay, moving on. You remember Brazil? We talked a couple of weeks ago about Brazil. And we talked about how Brazil was getting ravaged by COVID.
Yep.
Well, we talked about it in the past episode, and we said the scientists were actually predicting that they could surpass the U.S. in COVID death by summertime, by July.
Yep.
Well, right now, they just surpassed 400,000.
Oh, my God.
Right?
Jesus Christ.
Right now, less than 6% of all Brazilians are vaccinated. And the president...
Say that again?
Less than 6% of Brazilians are vaccinated. Less than 6.
No, right? You sure it's not a 0? You're missing 60.
And do they have...
No,
6.
My.
No?
Yeah. The president, Jair Bolsonaro...
Boo, you suck.
Which will, of course, famously touts itself as the Brazilian Donald Trump.
Oh God!
And at the time we said about this, what kind of idiot does that?
He touts himself. Is that?
Yes. He thinks he's proud of this.
He's proud of this. So okay. All right. Is he as orange as Trump?
No, he's darker skinned than Trump, I guess.
This is stupid. That's all. Like, I am totally at the intelligence
well,
level.
He's a conservative, obviously authoritarian, and he doesn't care, and he's been basically minimizing COVID from the get-go.
Yes, I do know
He basically told people, like, get over it, just stop whining, right?
Yeah,
just
go
like
back
Trump,
to
right?
life.
Well,
Can't shut the universe down forever.
Right now, he's actually being investigated by the Brazilian Senate for his handling of the pandemic. So,
Good.
So the Brazilians basically are saying at this point, okay, you know what, we had enough of this shit. We had enough of your crap. He's still in power, unfortunately, but that's where it stands at this point. So
yeah,
hopefully
hopefully
Brazil can turn this around faster. On a sad note, Michael Collins, he was one of the Apollo 11 astronauts, dead at the age of 90.
Well, he was sad that he died and all, but he was 90.
Yeah, of course, I agree. Okay. He was named the loneliest man on Earth, or in space, I should say, because when the Apollo 11 landed, he's the one that stayed behind in the capsule orbiting the moon. He didn't land on the moon, right? Only Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong went. He was in orbit around the moon.
He was just hanging out, just orbiting the moon, waiting to pick him back up.
Well, I'll be back later.
Yeah, I'll be back later to pick you guys up, essentially, when you fly back up, right?
I'll just keep this on track.
He was the designated driver, if you wish, right?
He's the space Uber.
Hey, do they charge you for waiting? The same way they do on Uber?
He was an Air Force pilot and became an astronaut in 1963. He did a first voyage in space in 1966 as part of Gemini 10. And then after that, Gemini 10, which of course was the precursor to the Apollo missions, Apollo 11 after that. And he felt that the Earth seemed very fragile from space. Although people always ask him, you regret not being
flat?
No. People always ask him if he regretted being on the ground. No, he said no. It was just simply being an honor to be part of that mission to begin with. Mm-hmm. So he was a humble man too. So unfortunately, he died. And I almost want to do a rant on this because it kind of bothers me that he's one of the last quote unquote heroes of a different era. Mm-hmm. I mean, who do we have as a hero in this generation now?
The Kardashians, hello?
That's what I mean. This is a guy who actually did something. Not just... today we have a tendency to worship CEOs and bullshit stars of socialites and who give a crap. But he was actually a guy who actually did something, And anyway, I could go a whole tangent on this, and maybe I will. And on top of that, did you guys hear there's a religious festival that happened in Mount Meron in Israel?
No.
This is it's a Jewish festival for ultra-Orthodox Jews, sorry. And it ended with 45 dead.
What?
Yeah. And
Nancy must have visited.
Two of them are Canadians and a number of Americans, but we don't know at this point how many Americans were in there as well. Due to a stampede.
Stampede?
Yes. Well, this is the first religious festival they've had in Israel since reopening the country, since they've shut down for COVID, right? This apparently there was an exit. There's an exit from the site that was kind of like a narrow tunnel, and at the bottom of some slippery stairs, and people essentially fell and just started crushing everybody to death. Essentially, this is a celebration of Lag Ba Homar, which is the first festival since the lockdown, and it honors Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I hope I'm saying this right, of the 2nd century. Apparently 100,000 people attended, 45 were dead, and 150 people were injured.
How many people got COVID?
Damn. We don't know. Actually, Israel's been doing very well on COVID.
Have they?
Front. Yes, they have.
Okay.
They actually, them with New Zealand are probably the country that's the most ahead.
Yeah, I think New Zealand has like 0 cases. So.
No, it's funny, too, because I remember reading that headline. I was like, going through, and me and Nikki were looking at news together and stuff. And we got in a heated debate because of that story about the definition of the word what was it? Was it stampede?
Oh.
Yeah, because I think it's a trampoline. Horses. Like I was like, where did the animals come from? Like, did a bunch of cows get out and like start running? And they were like, no, it was the people. And I'm like, how is that a stampede?
Yeah.
That's not a stampede.
No, stampedes have horses.
That's a trampoline. Misleading. I don't know.
You win the debate because I'm on your side. And I'm always right.
And finally, when it's used as a verb, it can mean anybody, but when it's used as a noun, it refers to animals.
Yeah. So. There you go.
Fair enough.
We solved it that way.
And finally, I want to give a shout out to an old guest that we had on the show, Damien Lee Thor. And he's in your neck of the woods, Brent. He's in Florida as well.
Oh, yeah? Oh, no shit.
He's one of the members of the heavy metal group Predator. And we had him on the show, and Damien has been actually tried to. He basically talked to me about this, but he basically tried to apply for a job at a Christian school.
Why?
Well, because
work.
I guess.
Because they pay money and stuff.
I
shouldn't say anything. I work for Christians too, but
the Christian school basically decided that they would not. It's the Potential Christian Academy, the PCA, and they would. They thanked him for his consideration for the position, but since he was not a member of the church there, they basically decided, we're just going to pass.
Of course.
So that show is like complete. It's like, are you kidding me? And you received a letter from Eileen Trimble, the assistant of the head of School of Communications for the Potential Christian Academy, and basically they said, you're not a member of the church, so we're just gonna, the position is just gonna be open for people that are part of the church. So that under the law is just simple discrimination.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd say.
So he reported them to the Department of Labor based on this, and God knows what they're going to do, but we're keeping an eye on it. So hopefully, Damien, hopefully you win, although I'm not sure what you gain by actually working at a Christian school.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? A job is a job is a job.
A job is a job. It is, and maybe
keeps
you can
roof over your head.
Bring some of your new music, and you can be sure everybody's gonna say, "Oh my God, we got the devil music in our Christian school."
Play it on your lunch break.
Make your ears, eyes, and nose bleed.
Yes, love it.
Yeah, the Civil Rights Act of the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employers from discriminating against individuals because of their religion or lack of religious belief in hiring, firing, or any terms of condition of employment.
That's in the States, too?
Yes.
I'm shocked.
Yes. And he's absolutely correct. So hopefully, this actually makes a big of a fuss. Mm-hmm. And I think you should go to the press with that. And basically, because that's the only way you're going to shame these Christians into doing the right thing.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's kind of weird. Like, you got to be part of this previous club in order to get a job at this particular school.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can decide, because what makes somebody a member, even. There's so many different ways to, break this down,
Aren't Christians the first one to also say, meritocracy, we should give a job to a person that actually can qualify and not just people that are part of the club or people that represent political views or anything like that, they
the reality is it's all a cultish club.
It is.
Don't you see did you see that letter? I don't know where I saw it posted on Facebook, but of a girl who got the letter from her church, and it was signed by all of the senior elders of the church, and they basically said, you will not come and let us teach you about how being gay is wrong, and so because you're not going to come and talk to us about this, we're not going to talk to you anymore. And here's all the scriptures in the Bible that say that the only time we're allowed to talk to you is to basically get you to repent for your sins and to come back to the church.
Shove your sins up your ass.
And it's like, okay, but
I remember reading that.
It made me angry. Just angry. Yeah. I think I commented something along the lines of, well, at least the trash took itself out, but don't tell me you're all about fellowship and love when this is what you send to your quote-unquote fellowship.
Exactly. We both know Christianity. I think that's the number one thing about Christians. It's not the love, it's the hypocrisy.
Yes.
It is
100%.
That's what turned me against them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Me too, actually.
You got a disdain history?
I do, actually, a whole week. So I decided, just for fun, for all of you Americans that know nothing about us, that I'll do a This Week in History Canadian edition.
Ooh.
Yes. What? It's actually a little bit more difficult to find stuff because we're apparently quite boring. Anyways. On May 2nd, 1964, a lovely horse named Northern Dancer won the Kentucky Derby.
A Canadian horse.
A Canadian horse. He was the first Canadian horse to win the Kentucky Derby.
Take that, Seabiscuit.
Yeah, and when Seabiscuit's Canadian too, is he not?
I don't think so.
Anyway, so
not every horse is Canadian, okay?
So when the Northern Dancer, when he returned home to Toronto, the mayor actually gave him the key to the city.
Oh, wow.
And he was such an awesome horse, he was also the first horse that got inducted into the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame.
What they don't know, what the Americans don't know, is it was actually a moose. Just to remove the antlers and let the damn thing run. The other horses were scared to death. I was like, oh my God, what is this big thing? It was a Canadian moose that actually won.
You're hilarious. So, on May 3rd, 1915, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae wrote the famous poem, In Flanders Fields.
Yes.
He wrote this in a field ambulance while he was in France, and it's believed that, the day before he had actually gone to the funeral of a good friend of his. His name was Lieutenant Alexis Helmer, and he had died at the Second Battle of Ypres, and so it's believed that actually that his friend's death was the inspiration to his poem.
I believe the pronunciation for that place is Ypres.
Yes, I'm not French, so we're going to say the English way.
And that's where we got the whole poppy thing for.
Yes, that's Flanders Fields. That's the start of the poppies.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Do you know about the poppies, Brent? I know that's a very Canadian thing.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd have that in the States.
The poppies, that's where you get heroin from.
Oh,
okay,
yes,
there we go. You know all about it then. That's all you need to know.
And that's what the evil witch used in The Wizard of Oz to make them all fall asleep because, heroin.
No, I don't know. But
November 11th is Veterans Day in the States, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's the same day.
It's the same as our Remembrance Day. I think it's Veterans Day, but for Remembrance Day, we wear poppies over our chest on our left side, over our heart to represent.
On the lapel there, they put a plastic poppy with a pin.
Oh,
yeah. So the red of the poppy is to represent the bloodshed during the war, and there's something about the black center. I just can't remember.
Although some of the original poppies were actually it was a green center and not black.
I think it's the other way around. They're arguing. Anyway,
I didn't know that.
Yes,
that's fascinating.
So that all started because of Lieutenant John McCrae's In Flanders Fields.
And here in Canada as well, it's a big no-no. Here in November, and it's close to November 11th.
Do not decorate for Christmas before Remembrance Day.
But not just that. I mean, if you're walking around town and you don't have your poppy, it's like you're smoking in public or something. Yeah, you totally do. It's like it's a big no-no. It's like no. Don't you go walking around without your poppy there, buddy.
It's like wearing a mask around
and wearing it and wearing it correctly is actually really important. Wearing it over your heart is supposed to be anyway. So on May 4th, 1971, this comes into what I was getting you to help me with some pronunciation earlier. Apparently I should have done it for May 3rd as well. So on May 4th, 1971, there was a huge landslide. It swept more than 40 houses away in a matter of minutes in a small town of Saint-Jean-Vianney say it for me, because I can't.
I don't know. What was it?
Oh, stop.
Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean.
Than't you. Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean region of Quebec. So this village was actually declared to be unsafe for habitation because of the clay that it was built on that caused the landslide in the first place. So all the remaining residents that weren't killed were relocated. And the area is still abandoned today, but if you go on Google Earth, you can still see the 324,000 square meter crater that the slide caused.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Bonus fact about the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, the lake itself is actually an actual crater from a meteorite. Oh. And it's one of 3 or 4. There was a chain of meteorites like long ago, before probably even humans walked, that basically landed on the planet like a couple of shots of a gun, bang, 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 bang. And one of these craters is actually around Lake Saint-Jean.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, on May 5th, 1877, Sitting Bull and 5,000 Sioux warriors laid down their weapons and crossed into Canada, seeking refuge from the U.S. Army at the Cypress Hills near Wood Mountain in the province that we now call Saskatchewan. As some may know, they were actually hoping for protection under British law after fighting the Battle of Little Bighorn, which is also known as Custer's Last Stand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so.
That should be known as Custer Idiotic Last Stand.
The dumbest fight ever, yeah.
Right? Dumbest fight ever.
Jeez, wonder what's going to happen. There's like 10 of us and 1 million of them.
We got this.
We got this.
Hey, we're white, okay?
Yeah, we're white. We can take them. We can take. Each one of us is worth at least half of them.
We don't got this.
Okay, so on May 6, 2014, beloved author Farley Mowat passed away.
Oh.
Farley Mowat, do you know who he is, Brent?
No, I don't think so. I think I do.
He's a very famous Canadian author, so that's probably why you don't know.
Brent doesn't even know where Canada is.
Yeah, it's probably around like where Mexico is.
Yeah,
right next to not Mexico. It's right next to Alaska.
Yeah, it is.
Right next to Hawaii in the little blocks.
Probably across the Atlantic somewhere.
Yeah. So he actually wrote about 40 books, mostly about life in northern Canada. His first book was called People of the Deer, which is about the lives of the Inuit. That was written in 1952, I believe it was. And he also wrote Never Cry Wolf, which is a possibly fictionalized account of his experiences observing the wolves in subarctic Canada. And he's written books all the way up into the late 80s, early 90s, I think he was writing. So I remember reading Farley Mowat books in elementary school.
They don't do reading in the States.
Oh, don't they? Maybe that's why you don't know who he is. So, on May 7th, 1920, the Group of Seven's first exhibition opened at the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto. It was actually a really crappy exhibition. They only sold like 3 paintings. But the Group of Seven is a very famous group of artists. They were around from 1920 to 1933. They were landscape artists, so what they were doing is they were trying to develop a distinct Canadian art that's through direct contact with nature.
And they would mow your lawn too.
They would, yes. And they started actually the first major Canadian national art movement. So they're pretty important people. And lastly, let's all end on a political note because I just have to. On May 8th, 1974, when you were just a little baby, Pierre Trudeau's minority liberal government fell after they were defeated in a vote of confidence after the federal budget was presented in the House of Commons.
Wow. So
after that started to pave the way to the 1974 election, where in July, Pierre Trudeau's government ended up with the majority government instead.
Jesus. Pierre Trudeau, by the way, is the father to Justin Trudeau.
Yes. Pierre Trudeau is who we have to thank for universal health care, if I'm not mistaken.
No, of course not. It's, what's his name?
Wait a minute, what am I thinking then?
No, you're thinking of, oh, Jesus.
CPP? He brought something.
Yeah, he brought something. Yeah, I think it's CPP, the Canadian Pension Plan. I think it's that. I'm not sure.
Something universal that helps Canadians be happier than Americans. That's what it is.
Oh, analogies to each other. So, sorry.
It's maybe EI. Oh, now I gotta go look.
You have to go look there. Yeah,
I thought he was universal health care.
Tommy Douglas brought the universal health care.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
He, incidentally, was also voted the best Canadian of all time. Just for that.
Well, yeah.
He brought universal health care and he was voted best Canadian of all time. So that just shows to you guys, to America down there, universal health care, it's a good thing. It really is.
It truly is.
I'm trying to convince people, and they're like, no, I want terrible health care.
I know. I can't believe the amount of people, Americans, that say that.
I can't be subsidizing the poor. I mean,
yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. All right. My dear Brent, you have another brilliant moment for us?
I do.
Brought to you by religion.
I do. So this week, and I believe it was just a couple days ago, this article dropped. It was, and this, I'm just going to read the headline because, and it's wildly misleading, but it's Christian conspiracist. I blew my chauffeur and it fixed a broken bus.
What?
Okay, repeat.
It's not what you think. It's not.
He just performed a blowjob on his... What?
That's exactly why I clicked it.
I totally clicked it too.
This is awesome. Okay.
It was Christian porn.
Oral sex, does miracles. I mean, which it does.
Well, in some ways, yes.
Not in the way that I, have experienced it. But Pastor Johnny Enlow And this is from the Friendly Atheist blog.
I'm sorry, I just had a thought. So, that puts a whole new aspect on what a mechanic does, right? Come on in, we'll fix your car.
Just come into this back room, man.
Come to this back room. We'll just change the oil in the transmission. We'll give you good service.
And we'll relax you at the same time.
Oh, sorry about that, Brent. Go ahead, please.
So, Pastor Johnny M. Blow. No, I'm just kidding. Pastor Johnny M. Blow is already known for spreading conspiracy theories. He says Donald Trump is president in heaven. Whatever that means.
Oh, God.
That means he's dead. Please tell me that means he's dead.
That means I don't want to go to heaven, that's for sure.
Okay, yeah, so that place sucks.
We have the best angels, nothing but the best angels. Our halos are the best, the shiniest and the best halos. The tremendous halos.
Get golden toilets, though. Free golden toilets is subsidized by them. Anyway. And Trump is still in the White House. That's another one of his
the white supremacist
conspiracies. Yeah. So, albeit as a profiteer rather than in the Oval Office. I don't know how that works exactly, but but sometimes he just creates lies out of thin air. And so,
sometimes?
I know. Most of the time, it's just not understanding reality. It seems, but but some shit he just fucking straight up makes up. So I almost feel like I have to play the clip because, when I read this, I was like, "What does he mean by blue? What is this?" And he kind of does this little like trumpet horn thing throughout. So I just kind of want to play it. That way, you guys can kind of hear how he explains.
All right.
What happens, right?
Just to say he got saved that trip, but we didn't want to look. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know what was under the hood. I don't know if there's an angel under there, having to connect.
Oh shit, my bad. Started at the end.
Costa Rica. I was leading a team of about 40 people. We had rented a bus, like a school bus. It was pretty old, and we rented the driver with him. He wasn't a believer at the time. And we were headed to church, and we were coming around the corner in the San Jose, there's kind of hills, and we were going up just a little bit, and all of a sudden, the bus went bang, bang, boom. It just made the worst noises imaginable, and it died, and the key clicking and nothing going on. Then we see smoke come from the hood, and we're 20 minutes away from the meeting I'm supposed to be preaching at. So I said, a moment there. Because of what God's done before, I said, just a minute. So I go inside and I say, somebody give me my shofar. They bring my shofar. Again, we're in the middle of the street, cars going by. And I go and I blow the shofar just one time on it. And I go close.
What's a shofar?
Close the hood to the shofar.
I don't.
Again, he wouldn't even believe it.
What was that?
Is it one of those ancient horns they use as a trumpet?
I thought shofar.
I kind of think, right? That's almost what it seems like. Like I'm just gonna blow this trumpet at you,
like the trumpets of Jericho kind of thing, right?
Maybe. I was so confused.
Oh, shofar, SHOFAR, shofar.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's a chauffeur, but
So it is.
So, let's see. Here, I'll pause that music.
Oh, a shofar, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a commercial going on here. Let me just skip.
I would thought you were saying chauffeur.
Let's just put the music on.
Oh, so it is. It's like a freaking horn.
So it's a horn.
Yeah.
Ugh. That's horrible.
Okay, I won't play it for the whole 41 seconds then.
Yeah, so essentially, it was probably a horn of an animal.
So that's why he's blowing his shofar, because he's blowing his shofar.
Honestly, I was like looking at it, and I'm like, this is weird, but this is like the way it's. It's like,
so he's blowing his horn. He's blowing his horn and not blowing his driver, to be precise here.
Yeah,
love it.
But still, the point is, he like blew. He blew this like type of trumpet, I guess, at the bus, and it fixed it.
Yeah, because it's the magical notes, right? The bus is,
because God does these things.
That's right. He doesn't just fix it. You must blow the horn first to alert him. It's like, it's like pressing the buzzer on the hospital bed, pressing,
right?
So for the nurse to come and give you a dose of morphine. It's exactly the same process. You gotta blow the shofar first. It's like, fuck me. God damn, these people are stupid.
I've never heard of that, to be completely honest.
Nope, me either.
No, never heard it, and because I never had a shofar near me.
The article makes a lot more sense now, because I'm like, why didn't they, I
prefer the sex thing first. I really prefer the blowjob thing first. See, that I think is a worthy story.
He's blown a chauffeur, that's it, okay?
Because I was just like, I have dyslexia. It's hard to read stuff, sometimes.
That's all good.
That word looks a lot like chauffeur.
It totally does.
The funny thing is I drive for a living as well, so I was getting excited here. Maybe there was a new field of work I could get into.
You're supposed to warn me not having mouthful of liquid when you say stuff like this.
And I was wondering what the horn thing. I was like, "Can you get me my chauffeur?" And I thought him bringing out a guy.
That's exactly what I pictured.
Whatever on you, and
I love it.
Fix the bus.
Because if that's the case, I'm getting ripped off. I'm just getting 30% commission. If I could get 30% commission and a blowjob, that's like motivating me. Or even
hey. No, back it up here. You're not allowed to get a blowjob at work.
Well, come on.
No.
Anyway.
Just no.
Yeah.
It's not even horny anymore. It's just a horn.
But, I just want to say, real quick, this is something Christians do.
100%.
When I was a Christian, we just made shit up, We just did that, and it was like, I picked up on it really young that, people would just start saying stuff was true, that was miraculous or whatever. And I was just like, okay, I feel like that they're just lying, but everybody around me just seems to be going along with it, so I'm just going to go along with it. And then I was like, I'm going to try this. Let me just make something up real quick here. Let me just see how this goes.
I just want to get one of those horns now and just blow it every time I get to my car. Hey, it works.
I blew the chauffeur.
I blew the shofar, my car turned on.
I need my own personal shofar. That's all I'm saying.
You know what? I hate to say, but when I think of a Christian horn, I don't think of something that makes a big burp sound. I think something more flaccid, something that,
a kazoo.
Exactly.
No, even a kazoo sounds too manly for a Christian horn.
It's
like, those really annoying sneezes.
Yeah. And then Ted Cruz appears. Because, he's like, especially with his beard now, he's like a flaccid Wolverine right now. So, instead of claws coming out of his hands, like limp dicks coming out of his hands. I'm Ted Cruz. I'm a Christian. we went way off base.
Yeah, we went way off base. Okay.
I'm a Christian.
So I just have to take a left turn back to Pierre Trudeau because I really need to recognize all the awesome things he did.
Recall.
Yeah, he implemented bilingualism in Canada.
Oh, nice.
He oversaw the patriation of our Constitution.
Okay.
And he also implemented and established the Canadian Charter of Rights of Freedoms.
Oh, nice.
So, it's not like he was a nobody in Canada. He was a pretty big, major prime minister.
Although he's really loath here in the West, though.
Yes, because of Western, and we called it Western alienation. Yeah, because he basically ignored us.
At the point when people criticized him, he actually gave him the finger, literally.
Yeah.
There's a picture of him giving the finger.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Anyway,
so live corrections, y'all. This is
live corrections.
Yeah,
sounds good.
That's right. You can just splice that in and post.
Anyway,
whether it's a shofar, it's a chauffeur.
That's right. Maybe Pierre Trudeau had a shofar.
Maybe he had a shofar.
And he blew him.
He blew his horn.
Blew it every day.
So anyway, let's move on. And got this segment here that we love to call
Things that make you go,
Things that make you go, Did you guys hear? In your neck of the woods, of course, Brent, yet again.
Always.
It's always in Florida. I don't know why. It's
Florida man. Go Google it.
It's always in Florida. There's a Miami school that's decided to discourage teachers from getting the COVID vaccine.
Of course.
Did you hear about that?
Of course they did. I think I know. You're talking about the Christian school that was saying that if you do get the COVID vaccine, like they would not, like they don't want you to be there or something. Like they put out like a PSA about that.
This is the Center Academy that basically cites some debunked claims of people being negatively impacted from contact with vaccinated people. So, apparently...
Oh, this is just hilarious.
Yeah, I know, right? Apparently being near somebody with a vaccine is enough to get you into trouble, according to these people.
It's going to alter you forever.
Especially will disrupt the menstrual cycle of women, apparently.
Yep. The vaccine is...
Because they all sync up, you know?
Yep.
When they're too close together, they sync. So that's got to be...
According to them, I guess, if you're a woman and you say, oh, you know what, I really don't want to have my period right now, you just need to hug somebody who's been vaccinated.
That's all I had to do.
That's all you had to do.
Fucking Christ.
It's going to mess up their period, man. Like, you can't mess with that.
So their annual tuition, apparently, to this private school is $15,000 a year, and it climbs to $30,000 when you reach middle age. So they're teaching young kids, obviously. The co-founder, Leila Settner, informed parents that they will not employ teachers that have had the vaccine until more information is known. So essentially, these teachers are in a position now that if they've already had the vaccine, they have to stay away from their students.
Crazy.
If they're about to get the vaccine, they have to wait till the school year is over. And if they get the vaccine, they won't have a job next year. How stupid is this?
Mm-hmm.
How
what the fuck?
Yeah. I mean... Jesus Christ. This is exactly what we keep saying on this show. These things have actual consequences here. There's actual consequences because these poor kids are basically put in a situation, and these teachers are put in a situation where they can't really do their job, or they can't get into a proper environment of learning environment because somebody would rather listen to QAnon and stupid things that you'll find on the internet. It's like, this is really, really serious. I don't understand what this woman's thinking.
Yeah, it's just the weirdest thing is they get so torn apart about this whole vaccine thing, and vaccines are complicated. Don't get me wrong; like it's a tough thing to understand, you know, in the way they function and everything. And it's like, you know, oh, they're giving you the disease. That's why, you know, I mean, there's so many ways to misinterpret, like, what this actually is, you know. And so, you know, I can see that's exactly what's happening here. They're latching on to all of the conspiracy theories. They're latching on to all of the nonsense misinformation that's out there. And there's a lot of it. You know, and so, I mean, you know, and then they're just like, no, you can't get a vaccine and work here. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What? Why?
It's so incredible because, you're right. You know, originally the vaccine was they would give you the disease, an inert version of the disease for your immune system to recognize. But for COVID-19, it's not even that. They don't even give you that. They actually just try to give you the signal, essentially. Apparently, there's not even an inactive version of COVID in the vaccine itself. They just give you, you know, the signal to basically get your immune system to say, hey, something's going on here. Let's go try to fight this out and fight this out. And people are just so ignorant. They don't seem to understand the basic science with this. You've got people, you know, now getting the jab saying, oh, I got the jab, so now I'm completely immune. No, you got to wait for your system to process the jab, right? It doesn't happen as soon as you get the freaking needle, right? You're still vulnerable. You have to wait for your system, your immune system to build up and decide, okay, now we know this intruder. We know how to fight it. It's like, people can't seem to think.
It's like programming your immune system. They just put the proteins in there so that they recognize them, so that when they are exposed to them, your body already recognizes it. It's real simple. This stuff, and it's like the technology was already there. You know, that was like, as far as you know, how we create the vaccines and whatnot. And we just, it's like plug and play. You're just like, oh, well, it's this one now. And then we just are all the research we've already done for all these vaccines. All you got to do is plug in this fucking specific virus and boom, there you go. You got it. You know, you're immune to that. Or you won't, you know, your body knows how to respond to that particular virus. And it's like, you know, it's just frustrating because there's so much, again, like I've gotten into so many different debates online about this, and it's frustrating because you're just like, y'all just listen to fucking scholarship, okay? Yeah. Go, like, when you type into Google and you want to know what the thing is, like, make sure to just put that fucking word in there, and Google will go, oh, so you want scholarship and not a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I totally agree. And, you know, it's the same thing for people that just got the jab there. Just think for half a second there, right? You just got the vaccine there, and you're complaining, oh, well, why do I still have to wear a mask? Because you gotta let your body process a damn stupid thing, right? It's not like you walk out of the pharmacy that you got your shot and all of a sudden toss your mask away. Don't be stupid about this, you know?
Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're that you won't spread it. Like, we don't know that yet. I mean, it seems to be the case that with mounting, like, we're not there yet, so we don't know. But it seems to be the case that if you do get the vaccine, get it and spread it. But we don't know that. It's still up in the air.
Yeah, exactly. All right. When we come back, we'll be talking to Joel Bakan about his new book and movie, The New Corporation.
Probably my favorite interview yet.
Yeah, it's going to be a great, great interview. So you just stay with us.
Listen to the Sacrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video, interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community. I interview people. We curse and usually drink beer because why not? It's the Sacrilege Cast, Zachrilege, and I can spell it after 2 beers, so you can too.
What's up, heathens? I'm the Godless Engineer, and it would be great if you could join me on my YouTube channel. Over there, we post videos every day. On Mondays, we normally post a response video of some kind. Tuesdays, we post our daily Bible podcast that I record with KC. Wednesdays, we read comments. Thursdays and Fridays is conspiracy theory and flat earth stuff. And we have a new segment that runs Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays that is Today I Learned from KC.
Hi, y'all.
So please join us over on the YouTube channel Godless Engineer, where we always stand up and use our voice.
I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. You could cut ties with all the lies that you've been living in. And if you do not want to see me again, I would understand. I would understand.
I know what God wants, and I know what he says, and in his book, I have access to a higher authority. Now, what I'll ask, how does he know that? And by what right does he claim to know the mind of God? And if you were a serious spiritual person, wouldn't you think it was a bit much that someone said they could come before you and tell you what God wanted?
Next guest is a constitutional law professor at the University of British Columbia. He is a jazz musician and author, and he is probably one of the coolest cats I've ever met in my life. He is a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Joel Bakan, thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, hey, I'm really delighted to be back. I've been waiting, by the phone for the last several years for you to call.
We'll send you that $100 check we promised you right away.
Right.
It's in the mail.
That's how I make my living, man.
Joel, it's such an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show yet again. But maybe give us a quick introduction as to who you are for people that might not have missed you the first time around there.
Yeah, sure. My main job is teaching law at the University of British Columbia, where I teach constitutional law and commercial law and contract law and various other kinds of things. And sometime in the late 1990s, I was teaching about corporations, and I was thinking about doing some academic book or article about what a strange thing the corporation is. And then just through a whole sort of variety of strange events, meeting Mark Akbar, the filmmaker, at a funeral where we were both pallbearers, and thinking about how I was frustrated with the fact that my work as a scholar didn't really get out to more than a few people who were experts in my field. I thought it would be great to write in a more popular way and actually make documentary films. And so I wrote the book, The Corporation, and wrote the film, The Corporation, back in the early 2000s. And so that's how that kind of happened.
That book and that movie was spectacular in a sense. And for people that have not seen this came out around 2004, and it's a must. It's an absolute must in your life. You have not lived until you've seen that movie, because it explains so much of our own society as it stands today. And you took the incredible leap of saying a corporation is regarded as an actual legal person under the law, which it is. And then you basically said, well, if it is a person under the law, what kind of person is this? And what did you find out? Please elaborate on this, because it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I had done, my undergraduate degree was in psychology, and I had studied psychopathy as part of that, and learned that people who were unable to care about others, who only were able to care about themselves and advance their own self-interest, typically, and who use sort of manipulation and coercion and control to achieve their self-interested ends, typically they would be diagnosed as sociopaths or psychopaths. And there were various checklists that we learned about that the World Health Organization had put out, and the American Psychiatric Association. And when I was sitting several years later in my corporate law course in law school, and I was learning, A, that corporations are indeed persons, they're deemed by the law to be persons and recognized as such, and B, that their legal constitution made them profoundly self-interested, that they always had to act in their own best interest. That was a legal command. The penny kind of dropped, and I thought, wow, here we've created a person in the image of a human psychopath. All of the sort of checklist items in the diagnostic checklist of psychopathy line up with corporations. And so that was kind of the germ of the idea, and that became the kind of structuring device of the first book and film. And I'm glad that the first book and film were a success. One of the really challenging things with the second book and film, the sequel, is everybody's like, wow, the first one was so amazing. And it's like, oh, I hope you feel that way about the second one, too. Because the first one was really a huge success. And a lot of people, like in the publishing biz and the film biz and all of that, who I had to pitch to get funding or to get publishing deals or whatever, their first question was like, why do you need to do this? Like, you seem to have done it all in the first film. Book.
Yeah, and it was such an amazing concept of actually psychoanalyzing a person like that, and to go through the history, because I think a lot of people also don't understand. Of course, it varies from country to country. Most of our audience is in the States and in Canada, and of course, they both had a bit of a different history as to how a corporation became a legal person under the law. But maybe you'd be so kind to give us a brief history lesson here as how a corporation became a person.
Sure. So the idea that you could take an organization or a group of people and turn them into one person for the sake of law actually goes back to Roman times. It's actually a concept that comes out of Roman law. And the short sort of legal lesson as to why it's necessary is because the law only recognizes people. It only recognizes people for the conferral of rights, of obligations. You can only sue a person. You can only be sued by a person. So the law is limited to conferring rights and responsibilities and liabilities and obligations on people. And what that means then is that if you have a business, like say General Motors, and it doesn't have personhood, then it can't operate as a legal entity. So it can't own property. It can't hire people and enter contracts with them. That would all have to be done with the people who own and run the corporation. And when you have such a huge company like General Motors or any other, that's not practical. It doesn't make sense. And moreover, those people don't want to be responsible for things that go wrong. And so fast forward from the Roman times to the mid-19th century, and you're in England, and they want to build railroads. And railroads, due to the invention of the steam engine, are now a possibility. You can create these huge networks. But in order to do that, you need huge amounts of money. And in order to get huge amounts of money, you need lots of investors. And so long story short, the corporation, the modern corporation as we know it today, the publicly traded corporation, is really invented then. There were precursors to it called joint stock companies, but the modern corporation as we know it was invented to raise the large pools of capital necessary to build railroads and then to build steamship lines and to build factories. That in order to take advantage of what the steam engine made possible, namely huge mass industrial enterprises, you needed huge mass pools of capital, and therefore you needed huge masses of investors, which meant that the best way to go about that was let's get a little bit of money from a lot of people. So we'll get 1 million people to invest in this. We'll call them shareholders. But it's not practical to have all those people running the company. So what they'll do is they'll hire some directors and managers to run the company on their behalf. But their liability will be limited because all they're doing is putting money in. So if things go wrong, they shouldn't have their houses taken away. They shouldn't be sued. So they're going to get what's called limited liability. The shareholders are not going to be liable for anything that happens. They're just investors. So that is the birth of the modern corporation. It's a necessary device for financing large-scale enterprise. So I've just condensed a bunch of history and concepts into a very short frame, and I hope it's clear. Ask me some questions.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, in the United States, basically, when they gave rights as a legal person to African Americans, after and abolishing slavery, corporations essentially decided to follow suit and say, hey, we're a person too.
Yeah, so there are kind of two steps in the process. The first step is that in all capitalist countries, capitalist corporations, and it's true in non-capitalist countries too, but capitalist corporations, whether you're in England, you're in Italy, you're in the United States, you're in Canada, have personhood. They have the capacity to operate as persons within the legal system. In countries that have constitutional rights systems like the United States and Canada, corporations do a second sort of step in the dance. They say, hey, you said we're persons, and so shouldn't we be entitled to the same rights, the same constitutional rights that people get? So the 14th Amendment is added in order to protect the rights of freed slaves, but the railroad companies come along, they go to court, and they say, hey, we're people too. We're just like them. The law says we're people, so we should have those rights as well. And we're going to use those rights to challenge government attempts to regulate us. Now, just so you know, that's not a purely U.S. phenomenon. In our own country, within the last 20 years, tobacco companies have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada and said, we're people too. We have freedom of speech rights, so we should be able to advertise our tobacco products without being regulated by the government.
Wow.
And the Supreme Court of Canada said yes. In an early case, and then the government came up with some weakened restrictions, and the Supreme Court said yes to those.
Whoa.
But the fundamental thing is that in this country, tobacco companies have the right to free speech and can use it to protect themselves from restrictions on advertising.
That is a scary, scary thought. I mean, next thing you know, they might have the right to vote as well.
Well, they might. Believe me, they may try to get that. That'll be a little more difficult for them because the way our charter is written, in order to have the right to vote, you have to be a citizen, and a corporation can't be a citizen. But in order to have the right to free speech or religion or freedom of association, you just need to be a one, because the way it's drafted is everyone has the right, and corporations are considered to be ones.
And of course, in the States, we've seen these things like Citizens United and all that, where corporations, they've asserted they have the rights to do things.
We've seen it here too. I mean, we've seen attempts by moneyed interests to try to shed themselves of restrictions on how they can contribute to elections. Fortunately, our constitutional and our judicial system have more flexibility to allow for those kind of government restrictions than in the U.S. constitutional system.
What I find fascinating is, in a way, corporations are designed, like you said, to be inherently selfish. It's a bit like you can't blame a tiger for killing a deer, and corporations are kind of basically saying the same thing. So, you can't blame us for doing this because that's what we're designed to do. It's like an efficient money-making machine.
Well, that's absolutely right, and that is really at the root of the second project, the New Corporation project, because what happens in the early 2000s, shortly after the first film and book come out, The Corporation, is corporations start saying, okay, we got the message. And they literally were saying this to me. They're saying, okay, you called us psychopaths, we got the message. Now we're going to... And it wasn't just me, of course. It was tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in Seattle, across the world, in the anti-globalization protests. And corporations said, we got the memo. We know that we've been nasty. We know that we've been even psychopathic. We're going to change now. We're going to become better. And so there was this major, major shift that I document in the new book and film, where corporations basically said, okay, capitalism's going to be different now. And they're still saying this. We are going to protect voter rights in Alabama. We're on the side of Black Lives Matter. We care about climate. We care about sustainability. This is a huge, huge shift. And it's why I felt it was necessary to do this second film and book, because I really felt that corporations were winning the public relations battle of convincing governments, convincing citizens that they had in fact changed their stripes. I mean, to go back to the tiger metaphor. And the basic point in the book and film is they haven't. They are still the same psychopaths, but they become more charming psychopaths, and therefore more dangerous psychopaths. And what's really happening, show with my trip to Davos and talking to people in the corporate world and activists and everything else, is what's really happening is that this new corporation idea that corporations are good actors now is being leveraged by like crazy for gaining much more corporate power than was ever even dreamed about in the early 2000s. So what corporations are doing now is they're no longer saying, we're assholes, give us your money. They're saying, we're angels now. So let us run your schools. Let us run your water systems. Let us solve world hunger. Let us solve climate. We don't need government anymore. We don't need democracy anymore, because now we're good actors. We don't need to be regulated, because now we're good actors. So this is what I document in the new project, and this for me is the most dangerous sort of hypnotism or mesmerizing that we're facing today.
Is there anybody in there? First one that comes to mind is somebody like Bill Gates. I mean, Bill Gates does a lot of philanthropy work, to put it in that sense. Is he also just a fraud, or do you feel, or is there an actual possibility that this guy might actually be trying to do some good?
I think it's more dangerous than him being a fraud. I think Bill Gates is a well-intentioned individual. I think he has sincere desire to do good in the world. But I also think that he's in the film and he's in the book, and this is the argument I make about him, he and all the other folks that are kind of part of this new capitalism, new corporation movement will say, and he does say in the film, that it's really corporations now and capitalism to take the lead on making things right in the world, to take the lead on delivering education to children in poor countries. And we feature that story in the film and book, to take the lead on solving hunger, to take the lead on solving climate change. So it's not that they're bad people, but their model for the way that we should move forward into the future is one that doesn't really have a place for robust democracy. It's one that sees capitalism, markets, and corporations taking the lead, and under the guise that they are now going to care about the environment and society. And there are two fundamental problems with that I point out in this new project. One is it is radically undemocratic, even anti-democratic, because whatever you say about corporations, they are not democratic institutions. Mm-hmm. So that's the first problem, is that if we embrace that idea, if we go with them on that idea, we're basically saying we're prepared to see democracy in the rearview mirror. We don't really care about it anymore. That's number one problem. Number two problem is that despite all the talk and despite a few nice programs here and there, corporations still always have to put their bottom lines first. Mm-hmm. They can only do good if it will help them do well. And that is a profound limitation. And the corollary to it is they will do bad if doing bad is better at doing well than doing good is. Mm-hmm. And so when you take those two things together, the sort of shiny idea of the new corporation, the woke corporation, the good corporation, really looks more dangerous than it does shiny.
So I guess the question I was about to ask exactly on that is, what's more dangerous? Is it a corporation that really doesn't care, or a corporation that just pretends it does?
I think, in a way, it's a corporation that just pretends it does. And the reason I say that is because as long as we have corporations, and maybe in some future world we won't, but as long as we have them and as long as they're constituted in the way they are within capitalism, the sort of psychopathic approach that we talked about earlier, then the only way for us to protect ourselves from the potential harm that they can cause is through democracy regulating them, through us citizens electing governments that properly balance the harm that corporations do against the potential good they can do. So we have to sort of see them as a tool, and a dangerous tool. You know, it's why we put blinders on a horse when it's drawing a cart through a city. It's because it's dangerous. It's because it can potentially sort of go crazy and wreak havoc. So if we see corporations as tools, an analogy I like to use is a power lawnmower. You know, power lawnmower is great. Like if you need to cut your grass, it's great. And it does a good job. But you don't want to use it to cut your hair. You don't want to use it to mix your smoothie in the morning. It has limitations. It's a tool, but it has a specific thing to do. And you want to make sure to regulate it. You don't want it to be too loud. You don't want it to kind of take off on itself and on its own and create all kinds of havoc in the neighborhood. So if we recognize that a power lawnmower is dangerous, we're going to have much better results than if we think it's a really benevolent thing, in which case we're going to end up trying to use it to cut our hair and get into all kinds of problems. So it's the same with corporations. I think it's better that we understand what corporations really are, understand how we can use them as tools for good public policy goals, but also understand how we need to constrain them to avoid the dangers they pose.
Is it? It seems to me I'm an idiot, right? So maybe you can teach me a lesson here. It seems to me that if I remember correctly, government can come in and basically revoke a charter of a corporation. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that corporations are made by governments. They can be unmade by governments, and everything in between.
So if a government went in there, and let's say a government that's been elected by the people there, and they basically decide to revoke this one line that basically says, the process, the purpose of a corporation is not necessarily to make money at all cost. How feasible is that?
There is this whole B corporation movement, which basically says that you can certify corporations as B corporations if they meet certain requirements and say that they're going to not be too evil and do some good in the world. In the same way you could certify an apple as organic. I go into a lot of detail in my book about why, though that may sound like a good idea, it doesn't work in practice because it doesn't really change anything legally about the corporation. It's a purely voluntary kind of system. So I would say that that's an attempt to do what you're talking about, but it doesn't really do it, and so it can be misleading as to how effective it is. Then you can have corporations, we do, we call them in Canada crown corporations, that are not entities that operate for profit, but they're designed to serve particular public goods. BC Ferries used to be a crown corporation, now it's been privatized. And various other crown corporations, like BC Hydro and other large elements, have been privatized. But the basic idea, or the Postal Service in Canada and in the U.S., those are non-profit corporations. Those are companies that are set up to serve public goals and that aren't set up in the same way that for-profit companies are. So yeah, you can do that. And again, I make this argument at length in my book and talk about it at length in my book. So long as we live in a capitalist system, you can't really do that. In our system, our entire system, our finance system, our production systems are all based on corporations pursuing profit as their main goal. They get credit from banks on the undertaking that they will put their interests first, that they will make as much money as they can, and that they will see that as their main goal. Increasingly, banks and financial companies and interests are asking them, maybe could you, do a little bit less coal mining, for example? Could you be a little nicer to the environment? So there's a bit of that going on. But fundamentally, it's not going to change things very much because ultimately our system is based on the extraction of capital from human labor, from the environment, from running schools and water systems, from anything that corporations can extract it from. And as long as that's the case, we're never going to see any kind of radical retrofit of what the corporation is, which is why in my book and film, the most recent one, I argue for re-enlivening democracy. That's where the work has to be done. We really have to create democratic governments that are truly that are truly responsive to public interest and that are truly willing to rein in markets and corporations and capitalism in ways that ensure that they don't do the kinds of harm they're doing and don't cause the kinds of existential crises that they're doing, and that they operate, again, as tools of public policy rather than us operating as their tools.
Wow, that seems to me like a huge uphill battle because, you're taking the idea of the Crown Corporation, so essentially we're nationalizing a corporation, a bit like Cuba did when under Castro way back then. And that's usually what proponents or opponents will say right off the bat. Government never works. Government always wastes money. Privatize, privatize, privatize. How do we get around that?
Yeah, the first thing to point out is that when opponents make those arguments, it is absolutely, and I'm saying this as an academic, it's a stupid argument. And the reason why it's a stupid argument is because nobody in the corporate sector, no advocate of capitalism, wants government to disappear. They rely on government to protect their property rights. They rely on government to protect their contract rights. They rely on government to build roads. They rely on government to create infrastructure. They rely on the state to create money, to create currencies. So nobody is really saying, I mean, rhetorically they say, oh, we want small government. No, they don't want small government. What they want is government that serves their interests and doesn't serve the interests that oppose their interests. And so they want small government in that they don't want to pay taxes. They want small government in that they don't want to be regulated. They want small government in they want to go into areas like schools and waters, push government out of them. Mm-hmm. But they don't want small government in that they need government to create them. How does a corporation even get created? Mm-hmm. By government? Mm-hmm. How does it get and hold on to its property rights? How does it enforce contracts? How does it do anything? It all requires law, and laws are made by governments. So it's an absolutely ridiculous notion. What's happened is corporations have won the ideological battle of saying they're in favor of no government or of little government, and totally obscuring that. No, what they want is government that is good for them. Yeah. And what they call that is small government. So it's absolutely ridiculous. The second part of your question, how do we challenge that? I can say it here and it's like blowing hot air, right? It doesn't change anything. The way to challenge it is through organizing. It's whether it's organizing around environmental issues, whether it's organizing in the labor movement, whether it's organizing politically and trying to elect governments that are better than other governments. In the film and in the book, my basic argument is that we have to rethink the way we do democracy. I show some examples, everything from the mayor of Barcelona to Bernie Sanders. I show some examples of what that might look like. And we have to really start taking democracy seriously. And the argument I make is that you can't have democracy that is not social democracy or democratic. You can't have a democratic system and still have radical inequalities and still have no social services and still have an environment that's being destroyed. So democracy has to be a much larger project than just about voting. And so in the book and film, I try to give a sense of what that looks like. But that's the way forward, and there's no magic bullet. It's work and organizing.
So let's say, for example, we do organize, and let's say, for example, I'll take Bernie Sanders here just as an example. In another time, in another dimension, Bernie Sanders is the president of the United States now at this point, and not Biden and not Donald Trump or something like that. How realistic is it for somebody like Bernie to basically start using the power of government to basically rein in corporations? To actually threaten to revoke the corporate license to begin with. How realistic is this?
Well, I think that when you look at what's happening even in this province, I'm not saying the NDP government is perfect, but in terms of measures around the environment, in terms of measures around labor relations, in terms of various social program issues, they are better than the previous government. If you look at the United States, I think there's some inspiration and hope in the fact that President Biden, who I'm not a huge fan of, but again, not perfect, but again, he is following the path that I think was established by Bernie Sanders, by AOC, by Elizabeth Warren. He's definitely giving more energy to the progressive side of the Democratic Party than I would have expected. And I think he's doing that not just because he's a nice guy, but because he's understanding, and again, this is a point I make in the book, he's understanding that that's the way that the political winds are blowing. It's true that there are political winds blowing in the kind of Trumpian, populist, right-wing, sort of QAnon direction. And I think I talk about that in the book and how I think that's connected to the rise of corporate power over the last 40 years. Mm-hmm. But there are other winds blowing in that other direction that we began to really see ignited, I think, with Sanders' run, that we see with AOC and a lot of other progressive American federal politicians, and that across the United States and Canada at the local level. You see some very progressive city governments in the U.S. You see a lot of state legislatures coming from more progressive places. So, for me, when I look at the combination of the rising energy around inequality that we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement, the rising energy around climate and the environment that we're seeing, with a lot of the protests by young people, by indigenous peoples. And when I see that, ideas that I would have never thought would get would gain any kind of traction, like raising corporate taxes in Britain and the United States, a whole sort of suite of social policy that we're seeing coming from sort of mainstream parties, I think connected to the crisis that we're currently in. I see that there's cause for hope that we may be moving in a different direction from the kind of neoliberalism of the last 40 years that we've been seeing. I guess I'm ever optimistic. I think I'm hopeful, maybe not optimistic, but hopeful. And what I really like about my new book and film, compared to the other one, is that in some ways they're more hard-hitting than the other one, but in other ways they're more hopeful. Because I was writing them just as the pandemic was breaking, and as the post-George Floyd protests were happening. And I really saw that, and I think we're in a kind of a reset mode, and not in the sense that the Davos people talking about it, but I think people are really seeing this kind of market-driven fundamentalism of the last 40 years as not delivering, and looking to other possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, after all, we just went through a speech of Joe Biden, who basically, in a way, almost refuted Reaganomics. And that's something
refuted Reaganomics, but also, I think, importantly, refuted Obamanomics. Refuted Clintonomics, refuted Bushnomics, refuted Reaganomics, refuted what seemed to be a consensus across mainstream political lines for the last 40 years that our society should be led by markets and corporations. There's this kind of relivening of the political, of democratic politics that I think is our only hope. But is a great hope.
I appreciate your optimism, but I gotta ask, when you're seeing the trend, and we got hope for that, when we're facing some of the biggest challenges that we face as a species, something like climate change, are we going to be able to make it?
I don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is that the only way to sort of get up in the morning and fight the fight and just live your life is to assume we can, but to really think seriously about what that entails, and what you can do and how you need to get involved. And it's much more than just this sort of corporate-led idea that we have to buy organic or drive an electric car, that, we do it through our consumption. That if we as individuals just make the right choices when we're at the supermarket, or take our recycling out and make sure we separate it all, that somehow that'll make it all right. It won't. I'm not saying those aren't good things to do. Of course, we should do them as an individual. I try to drive as little as possible and ride my bike. And, we all do those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, what we need is some very far-reaching, deep, and quite radical public policy to get us out of the mess that we're in. And it's going to be governments, not corporations, that lead us there, because corporations can't. They're inherently conflicted. They always have to line up the public's interests with their own. And so the difference between them and government is government's job is to serve the public interest. That's their job. They don't necessarily do it well very often, but we have to make them do it well. And we have to take responsibility for doing that. Because corporations' job is to serve their own interests. Mm-hmm. That is their legal mandate. Government's legal mandate is the opposite. So it's the only place and the only way we're going to be able to solve these problems. Whether we will or not, you have to go to Las Vegas to get a line on that. I'm not sure.
Joel, it's like I like how they do that. They shift the blame. And it was funny because I remember seeing this in the Mark Maron stand-up. He's like, we all did it. We all went to the store. We got our grocery store bag that was like reusable, and we're like, "That's it. I did my part."
Exactly.
It's now climate change isn't going to happen.
Exactly. So, that point, not as funny as him, but that is a central point in both the book and film. It's not that it's a bad thing to not use plastic bags. Of course we shouldn't be using plastic bags, but it's going to take a lot more than relying on us and our sort of voluntary decisions to do this or that, and relying on corporations and their voluntary decisions. We need law, we need policy, we need politics, and we need to make them work for the values and ends that they're supposed to work for.
Is it possible for us to come to a point where we say, capitalism has given us pretty much everything we can expect out of it? Is it time for us to invent a new economic system?
Well, when you look at history, when people sort of try to invent entirely new economic systems, it hasn't worked out that well. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, for example, of Soviet communism. Mm-hmm. Or I'm thinking of Pinochet's or Adolf Hitler's sort of uber capitalism, because those were very market-driven systems that were very good to corporations. So when you look at sort of the evolution of things, for me, the best way to look at this is to think about terms, like capitalism. What does that mean? What capitalism really means is a system where the ism is creating capital. Well, what is capital? Capital is basically the profit that's extracted from human labor, from the environment, from everything else. So here we have a system where the ism, the fundamental goal of our society, is to extract profit. Mm-hmm. That's it. And the idea is that somehow that's going to create a good society. Well, that's just ridiculous. If you came down, Martians came down from wherever and said, so how is your system organized? And we say, oh, well, here's what we do. We set up a system where everything is oriented towards exploiting people and nature to create profit for the 1% of the population, and then we hope that something trickles down. That's our system. That's capitalism. They would say, kidding? Okay. So for me, socialism, just forget about all the baggage and just look at the word. With socialism, the ism, the thing we're supposed to be striving to serve is the social, is society. Well, how can you oppose that?
Yeah.
Exactly. What other system should we have than one that is designed to serve society? So what I think we need to be moving for, and we may be moving towards, is a system where we don't say we don't have markets, we don't say we don't have corporations. We can have those things because they do certain things very well. Markets are a good way to organize production, not for educating 5-year-olds or 20-year-olds, not for running essential services like water systems or welfare services. But if you want to produce widgets or cars or iPhones, it works. Markets work. And corporations are good devices for raising capital. So what I would like to see is a system where we're democratic, where we're socialist in the sense that we say the ism is social. We're trying to serve the good of society. And we see markets and corporations as tools. And we ask, okay, how can they help towards that end of serving society? And so how can we use them to do that as tools? And that's, I think, what I just described is kind of what people like Sanders and AOC and, the NDP on its better days is striving for. I mean, that's kind of the sweet spot. Is we're not going to get rid of markets. We're not going to get rid of corporations, but we're going to reorient everything we do to serving the social good, because in a way that's democratic, because that is ultimately what democracy means. So let's take that seriously.
Wow, that is a fantastic way to end that. Thank you so much, Joel, for being with us on the show.
Thank you, Kevin, and I'll be sitting by the phone and waiting again.
We got to send him a bonus check now.
That's right. The book is called The New Corporation, How Good Corporations Are Bad for Democracy. Of course, spawned the new movie, The New Corporation, The Unfortunately Necessary Sequel. Joel, if people want to reach out to you and find out more about what you do in there, where can they reach you?
So I have a website, joelbakan.com. You can find out there how to get the book, how to watch the film, about me and what I'm doing, and you can contact me there. Perfect. And, of course, before we let you go and all that, tell us briefly what you're doing with that new band of yours. Well, right now we're rehearsing at a distance with masks on in a garage, waiting for the day that there's live music again. And as soon as that happens, it will be out there, and I will put it up on my website. Fantastic. Nice. Excellent. Joel, that's always a pleasure to have you on the show. But before I let you go, I got to have you say, hi, this is Joel Bakan, and I took a left at the Valley. Hi, this is Joel Bakan, and I took a left at the Valley. Fantastic. And that was Joel Bakan. Oh, man, I'm being a fanboy over this guy. He's so awesome. He is so awesome. Breathe. You gotta breathe. It's okay.
He already said he would give you an autograph.
He is so cool, and he's so knowledgeable, and his original book is fantastic. And I saw the sequel, the movie. I didn't read the book yet, but I will have to go out there and get it. Obviously, such a must. If there's any book out there that you have to read, this is one of them. This is absolutely one of them, and it explains so much about our entire society. And I just love the vindication he kind of gave me, because remember a couple of weeks ago, Brent, when we debated on your other show, we debated the Christian fellow. Dallas, yeah, Dallas, yeah. And I told him essentially exactly that. I said, when you're a capitalist, you're basically saying that all that matters is making money. I said, no, you're not a capitalist. You're a humanist. He says that's your priority in life. Joel essentially said the exact same thing here. He didn't use the word humanist. Mm-hmm. He used more like the word we need to be more socialist, because to deal with society. But it's exactly what he said. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of feel vindicated here that I'm not that much of an idiot sometimes. Oh, yeah. Joel Bakan.
Just give it a few days. I love you.
It's a movie and a book that is so worth reading, because it explains so much about our society. And it ties into atheism as well, because a lot of these corporations are run by Christians. And there is one of the reasons I'm so for this is there's a line in the Bible in Genesis that basically says, that God gave dominion of the earth over to man, and this is the mentality behind a lot of corporations. That this earth is for us to do whatever the fuck we want with it. And
that's not true.
And it's not true. Well, it's not true. And it is the base.
Mother Earth's going to wipe us out.
Well, it could. She totally could. But it is the base of so many of our aches today. The fact that corporations think like that, and they have that Christian mentality in there. It is the basis for so much of our problems. And if we can solve that, we will actually have paradise on this planet at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, it almost makes you think, like, if you park a car in a garage, right, and you let it run, and you close the garage, you fucking die.
Yeah, you
know what I mean? Like, and we got 1.4 billion of those motherfuckers driving all over this planet every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, and people want to act like that doesn't contribute to like our planet going, our planet be like, I don't know how long I can survive this, or at least keep you guys surviving.
Add airplanes, airplanes, add shuttles, add volcanoes, factories. It's not even just the cars. It's everything.
The reality of the situation is corporations have contributed far more to the pollution and the global warming than any one individual. And there's 7 billion of us? We're going on 8 billion people. Yeah. And I say that those corporations have done way more damage by exponentially.
Add to that the Christian mentality that God will somehow save us and we don't need to do this. I mean, you hear this from Christians all the time. Climate change don't need to be taken seriously because God said,
I'll take care of you.
So this is...
Yeah, that was my argument for a long time. It's like, it doesn't really matter because Jesus is going to come back anyway.
That's right.
One of the arguments...
Fuck the planet up all you want, you know.
I remember learning in church as a young age, and the elders in the church saying, that they grew up hearing that Christ was going to come, and all of their elders died before Christ came, but that's not a problem because this one, they're going to be the ones that see Christ, and Christ is going to come back in their lifetime, and it's disgusting.
It still hasn't happened.
No, no.
And won't.
No, it won't. They have to be real. The story has to be true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys, for being on the show, and thank you to our guest Joel Bakan, and thank you to my co-hosts Sabrina and Brent. Brent, quick plug if you want to find out more about the Happy Atheist. Where do they go?
Happy Debating Atheist.
Search on YouTube the Happy Debating Atheist, and you can find the latest stuff. You know what? Dallas was asking about y'all, so we're going to do another one.
Okay.
Yeah, he really wants to.
I want to roast this guy.
He's asking for a beating.
A little verbal smackdown.
You can find us at leftandthevalley.ca. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook at LATV Podcast. You can find us on send us an email, leftandthevalley@outlook.com. You can find us on patreon.com/LATV, and you can become a patron like Right to Reason Podcast. And what was the other one?
He changed his name.
Oh God, he changed his name again.
To The Simpsons. It's a great Simpsons quote.
It's a great Simpsons quote. Here it is. A noble spirit's and big as the smallest man. A perfectly communist statement. There we go.
Yes.
Got him. Shout out to that guy as well.
Thanks, buddy.
And give us a 5-star review wherever you find us. It helps us and helps others find the show. Coming up, we'll have Del on Earth. We'll be talking about all kinds of things with her for sure. We'll also have Seamus from the Free Prophets. We'll have my buddy, the Free Thought Prophets. Thank you. And we'll have Adam. We'll be talking about health and fitness. And we'll also have Dr. Clint Heacock, and he's from the Mindshift podcast in the UK.
Ooh.
So that's going to be interesting as well. So we got great things coming on the pipe.
Time difference on that one.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Looking forward to it.
Perfect. And you know what? Let's stop the music here, and let's leave the audience with a song from Joel Bakan and his band called Little Lozenge. So let's play that. All right, guys.
Are we ready?
Until next time.